Welcome to a very exciting and much anticipated episode of the real estate crowdfunding show, Syndication in the Digital Age at gowercrowd.com, where today you're going to hear from the most successful real estate crowdfunding digital marketer in the industry, Melissa Gilliam, Vice President of Marketing at Origin Investments. I am Adam Gower, and I've been a huge fan of Origin Investments ever since I first spoke to one of their principals, Michael Episcope, in Series 2 of the podcast. You can find a link to that conversation in the show notes for today's episode in the podcast section at gowercrowd.com, where you will also find more information about Origin, as well as gaining access to the popular whiteboard workshop that I've put together for you that shows exactly how to build your own investor acquisition system, soup to nuts, so you can raise money from existing investors and build a list of brand new investors. That's all at the podcast page at gowercrowd.com. What blew me away about Origin Investments and spurred the invitation to Melissa to join me today was their best-of-class processes for raising capital online using newly minted regulations that allow developers like you to raise capital online. Here's some of what you will learn in today's episode. How to raise $105 million in 17 hours, advanced real estate crowdfunding strategies, newsletter best practices, and as always, a lot more than that. You can find a selection of short video highlight clips from this episode, as well as accessing the whiteboard workshop, where you can learn how to build your own investor acquisition system by going to the podcast page at gowercrowd.com. Okay, now it's my great pleasure to introduce you to the top real estate crowdfunding digital and social media marketer in the industry, Vice President at Origin Investments, Melissa Gilliam. Melissa, what a great pleasure to meet you. Now, as you know, I sent you a whole list of questions that I wanted to ask, but in truth, there is only one question.
Oh, wow.
On November the 16th of 2018, Origin Investments announced that they had raised $105 million in 17 hours. So my one question is, of course, how? That's it.
I'm absolutely happy to talk about that.
All right, go for it.
Okay, so I guess how I'd answer that is it definitely was not quick. It wasn't easy. Yes, we got those commitments in 17 hours, but this was a year's worth of work in the making. So previously, we had had no open fund for the year preceding that open fund that we announced, the Open QOZ fund. So for that entire year, we didn't just, sit around doing nothing. We actively were producing content. We were creating as much content as we could to try to get interested people into our database. So that allowed us to build up our lead database so that we had a big group of people in our database when we were ready to announce a new open fund. And so one of the things we did during that time was we didn't just get these leads and keep them in our database and not talk to them. So we send out an email newsletter every 2 weeks, which we give people content. It's not promotional. We just talk about the things that they need to know when they're investing in private real estate. We also created a wait list on our website. So for that year, if people came to the website, they wanted to learn more about us, and they wanted to be the first to know when we had an open fund, they were able to sign up for that wait list as well. We also would keep them updated through emails by talking about what we had going on in our closed investments. So we would talk about how those properties were doing. So when it came time to open this fund, we had an interested group of people that we had already cultivated over the last year. So that made it a lot easier. When we were ready to hit the ground running, we didn't have to go and find people to talk to. We had already cultivated this group. So that made it a lot easier when thinking about who's the base that we were going to. Now, when we were ready to launch, we also still had to do additional things. We had to put together email campaigns. We hosted a webinar. We put together various collateral, which talked about the product. We put it up on our website. So it wasn't just flipping a switch, but I think the real key to getting that interest was cultivating these people over time.
All right. So you mentioned a wait list. I've been interested. Was that a conscious decision to stimulate a kind of a response in prospects, or was it just really because You didn't have anything to offer at the time.
Exactly. It was a little bit of both. On one hand, we know that scarcity really helps, right? Like people are interested in things that maybe they can't have access to. So I think there is something psychologically appealing to people about a wait list. And now that we have 2 open funds, it's interesting. I miss having those wait lists.
Right,
Because
exactly.
people like things that aren't available, right? So
Right.
part of it. But we really didn't have a fund at the time. So we definitely did have a list. And by joining the list, people knew that they would be the first to know when it was available. And people like that. They want the first VIP access.
Exactly. All right. So, Melissa, before we start talking about content production and all the other good stuff, why don't you tell me? I did kind of cheat a little by asking you the one question I've been dying to ask you, but normally.
I have to edit this to be at the end so that people tune in.
So, what I normally ask and what I'd like to ask you now, if I may, tell me something about you and
Sure.
your background and how you ended up at Origin Investments.
Absolutely. So I'd say that I'm a self-proclaimed marketing nerd. I've known that I always wanted to be in marketing. I studied marketing in college, and I've worked in marketing, actually in financial services, for my entire career. So for the bulk of my career, I worked at a company called Morningstar, the investment ratings company, not the organic food company, which people sometimes confuse it with.
I see.
So I've worked there for nearly a decade, started out in product marketing, and by the time I left, I was overseeing all the content and product marketing that Morningstar sold to financial advisors. So when I started at Morningstar, there was about 20 different marketers, but when I left almost a decade later, there was 120. So as you can imagine, over the course of a decade, marketing had changed quite drastically. And while I had gone to school to get my master's degree, I still felt like my role had been getting more siloed as the company grew. So I actually did respond to just a recruiter post on LinkedIn. It was for Origin, went to go, talk to the principals there, and I ended up just really loving what they were doing. And I really liked the idea of working at a small firm where I could have oversight of all the different aspects of marketing. So every different tactic that can be done, my team does that at Origin. So I've been here now for 2.5 years, and I really do feel like that has helped keep my marketing skills sharp, is being able to work at a small firm and get to work on all the different types of tactics that are possible.
So all the stuff that I get from Origin, the newsletter, I see the videos on LinkedIn. What else do I say? I mean, a bunch of stuff. That's all. You manage all of that whole process, do you?
Yes. So it's not just me, thankfully. So I have a marketing associate. I also have a graphic designer, and we have a video producer. And we do partner a lot with external firms, so to update our website. And we do have an external content creator who's been great. I work directly with her to work on some of the articles that we produce as well. So it's not just me. We have a team to do it, but we do have a small and scrappy team too. So we do a lot for the number of bodies we have.
And what was it about Origin? You said that you really liked their, I suppose, I mean, I put words into your mouth a little bit, but their culture and their challenge, right? What was it that you liked about that?
Yes. So one, I liked the position, so the different marketing aspects, but I wouldn't have gone to a company if I didn't believe in what the company was doing and the people that worked there as well. So Michael Episcope and Dave Shear founded the company as a way for them to invest their own money about, I think, 12 to 13 years ago now. They had accumulated some wealth in their first career, and they needed a place to invest it. They ended up investing the money of their friends and family, and today they invest 54 million of their own capital in our funds. So what I really liked is Michael and Dave are very active leaders. They're here every day, and they invest their own money in our funds. So I could believe in them. I could believe in the product that they were creating. And I think they're visionaries, and I think they really care about the people that invest with them. So that was what really drew me to the firm.
All right, so let's talk about the different types of content that you produce over there. So there's video, all right? There's video, and there is the kind of thought leadership content as well.
Yes. So we have a huge library of articles right now, and we've invested in writing articles for about the last 3 to 4 years. And I'd say there's a lot of that content is very evergreen. So it's what people need to know before, during, and after they invest in a private real estate investment. we only recently last year started producing videos. So that was new for us. We've got our video producer on board. He's great. And we're just starting to see what video can become for us. And we're also contemplating starting a podcast. So I love talking to you and just getting tips, right? Because we really think that's a missed opportunity. Some people love listening to podcasts, so it's just another way to reach people. We've also tried to package some of our content into different guides so that people can get, they don't have to just read individual articles, they can read the whole guide.
And what do you find people consume the most? I mean, you've done a lot of videos, so how are you measuring that?
It's hard to tell what people like right now because we've only just gotten started with the different types. So we know that our articles are the most popular, but that's probably because we have so many of them. Videos, we're measuring it right now just strictly through views. So we're getting decent amount of traction, but it hasn't taken off as quickly as our articles have. But that doesn't mean that we don't think it's worthwhile. We just aren't getting a lot of the leads from the videos as you can get from articles.
Interesting.
To embed a call to action in. And so for videos, we're experimenting now with including calls to action within our videos to see how that does.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you talk about it and then refer to a landing page of some sort as part of the video?
So for our videos now, we're using a platform called Vidyard, and you can put the call to action right in the video, and then people can click it, and then yes, you can redirect to a landing page.
Interesting. Okay. So question then, I've noticed that you have a lot of views of articles on the website. And yet, when you look at LinkedIn, for example, the same articles have almost no interaction, right? It's like there's no engagement. So tell me what you think about that. Yeah, what is that going on?
So we are involved in social media and we post our things on social media, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for where we can grow on social media. Right now, we're just posting really our own content, but we don't do a good job, retweeting other people's content or engaging with other people's content that we're posting. I think if we did more of that, we would see a lot more engagement on our social media channels. I think right now we're only at the start of what we could be doing in terms of social.
It's really interesting you say that, because my thought is that, the real estate investor is not likely to, or somebody who's in that frame of mind, or a sophisticated investor is not the kind of person who tweets or who, posts comments. But what they will do if they see something is they might go to the website and do some research. And that's where all the interaction, all the engagement actually happens, right? It's different personality.
I think that makes sense. I also think it comes down to what our goals are and where we spend our time. So our goal has been to create content in order to drive traffic to our site. So we create that content and we are seeing that the number one reason why people get to us is through our organic content, by searching through organic search. And so it makes sense that that's where we're investing our time and that's how people are finding us. If our goal was to really create engagement and to just have discussions and to connect with people, then we would be more active on social media. So I don't know. I think what you're saying could be true. Yes, our target audience isn't necessarily just looking only on social media, but we know that when they have questions or when they're looking for resources, we definitely know that they're Googling. And I think they are all active on social media, but it may be for just more personal reasons versus just looking for investment opportunities.
Yeah, that's kind of the point that I'm making, is that my sense is that investors aren't chit-chatting about investments online. But when they learn that Origin has an opportunity, or they even hear Michael's name or David's name or the name of the company, that they do research online. And then because you have this library that's out there,
right,
your credibility is enhanced and is built that way, and it just funnels everything into the website.
Absolutely. So we target high net worth investors, and I think a lot of people have conversations with their friends and their family and in their personal networks. So what are you investing in? What have you heard here? How does this sound? But then I do think that we definitely see at night, everyone's Googling to kind of do their due diligence on their own time, to conduct that research and to inform themselves. But they are getting, ideas from their friends and their networks too. And a lot of these networks have started to actually formalize and go online. So there are various like investing groups that do have forums that we see people posting about and coming into our website from. We do see some conversations happening on Reddit. That usually isn't always the high net worth investor, but we see more and more of that. So I think more of those conversations will start happening online. And I think it behooves companies like us to get our presence out there and to get our libraries created so that when more of this conversation does continue to happen online, that we are the first people that show up when they search.
Yeah, really interesting. Not just, I thought you were actually going to say that you're the first people to respond when they make a comment, right? That you're there and present as well.
We've toyed around with doing that, but we also don't want to be the big brother who's always watching. I do think we could do better about starting conversations. Knowing that people want to have these conversations, I do think we could facilitate some of that in these online forums. We haven't prioritized that yet, but that is something that we're thinking about, is how can we be a thought leader there and to get people talking more.
Now, you mentioned that you are enjoying a lot of activity via organic, which implies either that you're not doing paid or that paid is not working. Or tell me a little about your experiences in both of those fields.
Sure, absolutely. So we do paid marketing. I would say, though, about 75% of our leads currently come from organic and 25% come from paid. I don't know if that's the right mix, but that's the mix that we're in right now. We do have good success with some paid marketing efforts. Like I said, last year we didn't have an open fund. So this year is really the year that we're going all in on a lot of our paid efforts. We're seeing really good results with sponsoring e-newsletters. We also do some, sponsored content, and, we guest blog on other people's sites. Sometimes we do referral programs. So we are seeing good tractions through those channels for sure.
I see. And sponsored content is where you take one of your thought leadership pieces and pay to have that on somebody's site. Is that how that works?
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell me about content production. And how do you come up with the ideas for the content, and who writes it, and how long is it, and what have you found works really?
That's a great question. So I always, whenever I get started, I just use like what's called the customer journey map. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but I really put myself in the shoes of our customer and the person that we're trying to target. And then I go through every phase of their journey. So I think about what's on their mind when they're, before they even know they have a problem that they're trying to solve. Here, when it comes to an investor, they're really thinking about, how can I make sure I have more than enough money for retirement? How can I make sure I can keep up my current standard of living when I'm ready to retire? That's really what's on their mind there. And so then we move on to, now they realize they have a problem that investing can solve. Now they know they need to find an investment opportunity to achieve these goals. And then they're going to start actively researching different solutions to this problem that they have. So what are the different investing opportunities out there? And then when they find Origin, they need to figure out why Origin is the place for them to invest. So after we put ourselves in all of the shoes of that journey, then what we do is we literally sit down and we write every single topic that is associated with every phase that I just talked about. So what's some content we can provide at each stage? Then we have a running spreadsheet that we keep and we update every year. A lot of that content is evergreen, which means that regardless of what's happening in the market today, they're always going to want to know, like, why should they invest with Origin? Or they're always going to know, why is private real estate a good investing opportunity? That's evergreen content. But on an annual basis, or even, when things are happening in the markets, we think about, okay, what do we want to write about today that might be timely? So qualified opportunity zones, right? We talked about opening our fund earlier. That was something that is new and timely. So we wanted to create content for that as well. We just keep a running list. Then I'm very fortunate because the people at our company are really smart and they're great writers. And a lot of them are willing to write and contribute to the website. So I usually assign out articles and topics just based on who I think might be the best person to write about them internally. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we have a wonderful person that we work with and company externally. She does not write all of our content, but she writes a good percentage of it. And then I literally edit personally every article that we write. So it is a big, it is a big time commitment, but, we found it to be very useful. And then similarly, how we create our videos is we just think about what are different topics that we have in mind that we think would better come to life in video. And we have Michael and Dave and other employees who are more than willing to be our thought leaders in talking about these subjects on videos as well. And like I said, I'm fortunate because we have great thought leaders at this company. So it's not like we have to do a lot of external research. We're really just pulling from our own firsthand knowledge of being in the business over, the last decades. So it's really, I feel like I'm very fortunate when it comes to having this engine.
Yeah, I know. As you know, I've spoken to Michael for a podcast
Yes.
before and was blown away, really. I mean, he's an amazing man. And I haven't spoken to David before, but certainly
On a future podcast, then he's good too.
Yeah, I've no doubt. So what about the balance between personality and corporate? Right. I mean, people say that investors invest with people, right, as much as with the deal. So how do you integrate the personality of the company into your marketing?
That's a really good question. So Michael and Dave have very unique and distinct personalities, and they're both really competent leaders in the firm, but they have different specialties. So Michael oversees, the more operations side of the business, the product side of the business, and Dave oversees asset management. So we have a tendency to make them the leaders of their own areas, and the areas of that they have experience in their own personal lives before they came to Origin that I think are both really interesting and unique that they pull from. So we do we keep, the content focused on their different personalities and what they're interested in personally too, because if they're going to commit all this time to helping marketing through these different articles and videos, we want them to be passionate about what they're writing about and interested in the subject. So we really talk about that. As it relates to social media, I think that we definitely have an opportunity for improvement there too. I would love it if Michael Episcope had his own Twitter. He's a really unique personality. He's a risk taker. He's really interesting and he's really opinionated. And I think in a good way. And I think he has a unique point of view. So I would love it if he would have a Michael Twitter that he would, share things on. There's a long list of priorities and he's running a company. So I'm not going to ask him to do his personal Twitter, but when he posts on LinkedIn, I think it's interesting. So most of our content goes out on our corporate social media accounts and our corporate website, but we do like to inject everyone's personality in their own individual articles. And like I said, someday my goal is to get them both very active in having their own personal Twitter accounts and whatnot. Dave Shears he does like to post on his LinkedIn, so he's really engaged in that. But we could still do a little bit more of that.
Yeah. So let me ask you about that then. What is the time commitment for principals in a major real estate development company that's looking to raise capital? What is the time commitment to all this content production and social media posting and marketing in general? Is it?
I think that Michael and Dave's time is best spent running the company and finding the assets and managing people's money. So we don't ask for all of their time, but we do ask for some of it. And honestly, these gentlemen really like to work. They're very involved. I'd say like they go above and beyond when it comes to contributing to this, but not everyone has to be involved. It's up to you how involved I think you need to be. If you have a team that you can work with, or even just one person who can help you, a lot of that responsibility can be outsourced. You just need to look it over, make sure you agree with the thoughts in the article and sign off on it. A lot of times we just have an interview with Michael and we interview him and ask him questions and then we write the article. He does not write every single article. There's just not enough time in the day for that. So, I don't have a specific amount of time. You do have to give some time, but it definitely shouldn't be your full-time job.
Right. Look, and it replaces going out and meeting and greeting investors, right? The old school way.
Exactly. I would never say that you're going to 100% get rid of that in this business. There's always going to be some of that. But right, all of this information that we're putting out there, we can give it to the masses versus just having these conversations with one person after one person after one person. So it's worth the time investment.
Right, exactly. I mean, basically what Michael and David are doing is they're talking to you as they would to an investor, and you're amplifying that voice.
Exactly, correct.
So when you came in to Origin 2.5 years ago, what were the biggest challenges that you found coming into the organization?
You're right. So Origin had done really well in terms of their marketing before I got there. So they had invested in the foundations. They hired an agency to help them with their logo, their brand voice, the messaging, to create the website. So when the recruiter had reached out to me, the first thing I did obviously was Google the firm. I saw they had a great website. I saw Michael had contributed to Huffington Post. So, they seemed legitimate. And when I came in and talked to them, the one thing that stood with me is that marketing reports into Michael, and he was just very committed to marketing. He's likes to experiment and very passionate about it. He believes in marketing. So I knew that I didn't have to change that. In some cases, marketers might be brought into an organization where they really have to prove that marketing has value, and that is not the case here. But Michael was so passionate about marketing that they were trying so many things that it was hard to tell what was working. So when I came in, one of the first things we did was just try to ease up on doing all of the things at once, and to try, I'm a big believer in testing, and you definitely have to experiment, but there were so many things that we weren't trying long enough to see if they worked or not. So just to try to ease up a little bit to figure out exactly what it was that was working. Second, another thing we did was we had a great website, but the only call to action on the website was to create an account. And some people who come to your website, they might not be ready to create an account yet. That's really targeting the people who are really far along in their journey, who know that, the company is right for you. They might be ready to create an account, but not everyone is. So we changed up the website just to create some additional offers so people could now download guides, they can subscribe to our newsletter. So that really helped in terms of getting additional leads in through the website and thinking about how we can maximize that. Then I think also that when I got into the position, the jury was still out on would creating this content really help. And I think it was helpful to have me on board to measure everything. I'm big into measuring and showing what is working, what isn't, and just help educate on that. Creating this content is a long-term investment, and you're not going to necessarily see the results overnight. It takes, years, it takes months, but you have to start. And so I think showing that and educating on that, and just being able to increase the output of what we were doing, I think was really helpful.
So when you came in and you saw all these different techniques that were being tested or at least experimented with, that presumably, based on what you've said, didn't necessarily have measurement metrics behind them, what did you find? What kinds of measurements did your performance metrics did you implement? What did you find didn't work very well that you abandoned?
One thing we did right when I started that didn't work very well was outsourced our media purchasing to a company in which we spent a lot of money to just do more brand level messaging. I think it might have helped.
You mean paid advertising? Is that
right,
what you mean?
which you always wanted. I think you should always do paid advertising, but we worked with a media planning company. We gave them, a few $100,000s, and then we did some advertisements that were just about investing with Origin. And then they just went to our website. And it was hard. We kind of lost people from there, and we got some traffic, but we weren't really sure what happened to them. So one thing we prioritized was trying to stick with promoting our content and to stick with promoting our products versus just promoting only our brand. I think when it comes down to, there's a lot of companies who you'll see do banner ads and whatnot that just direct people towards their individual homepages. But what we have a tendency to do now is when we're promoting our products, we create a specific landing page that we can measure each individual traffic and see what happens with each person that comes to that individual page. So we've tried to move towards doing that. If I had a huge unlimited budget, I would for sure have just general brand awareness campaigns, which I would be doing things just to get Origin's name out there, and I would be doing all of the content, and I would be doing all the product campaigns. But we're trying to prioritize our spend, so we can't do every single category. And so when if I have to prioritize, I will always pick the product marketing and the content marketing.
Interesting. Okay, so product marketing and content marketing, meaning that you are, product marketing is advertising the funds themselves, but content marketing is distributing and encouraging people to sign up for a download of some sort?
Correct, yeah. Or just talking, giving them information about why they should invest in private real estate. And then the brand level marketing is just promoting Origin, the company in general.
And what are what performance metrics do you use? How do you measure performance? You can get granular and detailed. Yeah.
You're kind of crazy. So for every tactic that we do, we have a unique URL that we use to track using query strings. So for every single tactic, we track how much we spent. We track how many visitors to our landing page. We track the conversion rate. So of the people that came to the page, how many people actually ended up filling out the form that we put on it. So then we track the conversion rates of the landing pages, and then we track the conversion rates of people that invest with us after coming through the form. And then we also calculate our cost per lead and then the cost per investor. So it gets complicated if you're right now. I think we're doing 10 different tactics. So you really do, it takes a decent amount of time to set up individual landing pages and tracking mechanisms for everything. But if you don't do that, otherwise you don't know what worked and what didn't, and what to rotate in.
Exactly. And the ultimate conversion is of course invest. Right?
Exactly. Last year we didn't have an open fund. This year we have 2 funds open, so it'll be interesting to see all of the data from this year. It's a long cycle. We did see someone who filled out a form and 2 days later they ended up investing. We just saw someone do that today, but usually it doesn't take 2 days for someone to get up and down, right? So we might see that someone closed today who originally filled out a form a full year and a half ago.
Right.
That's okay. It might take some time. That's why you always have to be marketing. You always have to be present on social media, because you never know who's going to see you now that might not be ready to invest today, but might be ready to invest a year later.
Now, your newsletter, tell me something about that, because you have various components. You have thought leadership, you have in the news, you have what we're reading, and you send it out on Saturday mornings. You're the only person that does that.
Right? So it's funny, when I came to Origin, I had the belief that you had to send a promotional email out on Wednesdays. Like that was just the best day of the week to do it. But, we found that Saturday works really well for our investors. I think that when it comes to individual investors, it's the weekend. They have some time. Surprisingly, a lot of people we see a lot of our leads come in on Saturday night or Sunday nights. I'm sorry, none on Saturday. People have lives, but on Sunday nights, a lot of people are starting to think about, they have some time. They're starting to think about what they should be researching, where they might want to invest. And we found that we get really decent engagement rates on Saturday. I mean, we might continue to test this and switch it up. That might have worked for the last couple of years, but I feel like how it kind of cuts through the clutter and really stands out, because no one typically emails on the weekend.
No, and I totally noticed that. And when you say engage, you mean click through, do you?
Yeah, we track the click throughs and the open rate of each piece of content to see how they perform.
I see. And it's a fairly standard formula that you use, though, right? Or do you test that as well, what goes into the newsletter? So
we've used this format for a while now, and you actually, we're having this conversation at a very, a good time, because we were just talking about it as a team earlier this week about maybe it's time to revisit. You get on autopilot. I think we've been doing it the same way for the last year and a half, and so now is a good time for us to revisit it and look at the numbers and say, what do we think's working, what isn't. I've tossed around maybe we need more themed issues where you have certain themes and then everything in it relates to a certain theme. And then we've tossed around, maybe we want to put more, maybe we want a whole video section, a whole article section. There's so much we could be doing. We've been on autopilot for a while, and it's time we're looking at the numbers and thinking about what can we do to make sure that we keep our engagement numbers high.
Yeah, I've been testing plain text newsletters as well, and they're incredibly impactful, actually.
I think that's a good point. When I think about how I keep up to date with marketing, I subscribe to a lot of marketing e-newsletters, and a lot of them are very just text-based. You don't even need images. You just click on these links.
Yeah, personal email from Michael, dear John or Jane, I wanted you to take a look at this. It stands out so much.
Right.
That people are just really, we've found with my clients, really responsive. It could be very effective, not all the time.
Great idea. I'll let you know what we end up deciding.
Yes, well, I'll be on the receiving end, I hope. All right. Well, so I have one final slightly naughty question to ask you, and then 3 sign-off questions, if I may. So I've been watching the videos.
Okay.
And last time I spoke to Michael, he told me very proudly that you'd set up a studio, which I was dying to let me come out and film in. I wanted to fly out and just spend a couple days using that studio. Secret, it says secret. Let me into the secret. Has he got a green screen, or is he actually sitting in?
Yes.
I knew it.
But we're building a set, not like a huge set, but a backdrop. In the meantime, we've been using a green screen.
Yeah, good. I knew it was.
Yeah, we do have a studio. You should definitely come and look at it. Like I said, we're talking about doing a podcast. So
I don't want to come and look at it. I want to come and record in it. What are you talking about?
Record in it, absolutely.
Yeah, 2-3 days. I'll put all my scripts together and I'll just come out and record. It sounds fabulous.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah, I'm sitting in a little makeshift studio. If you could see what was around me, you wouldn't believe it. Lights everywhere.
It looks impressive.
All right, so let me ask you, if I may, 3 sign-off questions that I ask all of my guests, and that eventually I'll parcel up and we'll distribute on social media. So, Melissa, first question. What is the most important thing, do you think, a sponsor or developer starting out syndicating real estate online should keep in mind?
I think you need to start small. If you think about all the different things you can do and all the different channels you can use and how active you could be, you will never get going. You need to just start. You need to pick one channel, start on LinkedIn or start on Twitter, just pick one, and then just commit to it and, get going. Measure what works, stop what doesn't. But I think we live in a time where it's easy to see and you hear all these people and companies going viral. And so you think you're going to start and then in one day you're going to have 500,000 followers. It doesn't work that easy, right? You have to start, just get started and start small and go from there. And I think you'll be surprised at how it does build up over time.
Yeah. Second question. What has been the hardest lesson you have personally learned online?
I think one thing that's good about everyone being online is you can get ideas from other companies and other companies like yours. And you can say, oh, we should try that. We should test that. But I've learned not to compare ourselves to others, because what works well for one company might not work well for you. And what you see from one company might be a multi-million-dollar budget from an external agency with a large team. And you might not have that capability yet. And so I think it's almost like keeping up with the Joneses digital media edition, right? You can't necessarily compare yourself to what other companies are doing. So I say take ideas and try, but don't get discouraged if you are looking at what's happening and thinking, how come I can't do that? Because there might be a lot more to it behind the scenes that you don't know.
Final question. What are your key daily habits? What are the key daily habits that you have that make you successful online?
I commit to it, and every day I'm going online. I have the fortunate scenario where I take the L to work. So I have a decent commute and I don't have to drive. I don't recommend this if you drive, but I spend my commute time catching up with what's happening on social media. This is when I read all of my marketing e-newsletters. I look at my Twitter feed and I see what, different CMOs and different marketing companies are tweeting out. I use my commute time for that. I also think, nothing's going to replace getting out to lunch and clearing your head, but a few days a week, I sit in front of the computer over lunch, and that's when I catch up on social media and what's happening in the industry. I make sure to check in every single day, if not a couple of times a day. So I think you just have to commit, and you have to find the regular times that you go in and make a commitment to that, because that'll keep you regular and on track. If you commit to a certain time, that'll keep you honest.
Very nice. Melissa Gilliam, Origin Investments. What an enormous pleasure. You work for one of the premium companies in the industry. It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful talking to you. Thank you for having me.
That was the top digital and social media real estate crowdfunding marketer in the industry today, Melissa Gilliam of Origin Investments. You simply cannot do any better than to adopt the systems and digital marketing strategy and tactics discussed in today's episode, and I've summarized exactly how you can do that in a whiteboard workshop that you can access completely free of charge on the podcast page for today's episode at gowercrowd.com. Hey, thanks for listening, and thank you, Melissa Gilliam at Origin Investments, for spending your time with me today. That's all for this episode. I'll see you next time, and for now, this is Dr. Adam Gower signing off.